All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Facebook. My name is Thomas Clifton, and I'm really excited today to be interviewing and bringing you all the story of Neena. I'm going to let her introduce herself. I don't want to take that away from her. So, Neena, take it away. Introduce yourself for us.
Awesome. So thank you. My name is Neena Speer. I am the present owner and managing attorney at Neena Speer Law Firm. I actually commenced practice in 2018, the same year I passed the bar. So you can look it up, if you want to go find out when I passed the bar exactly. Go to Alabama State Bar and just type in, past lists. Our names are publicly posted. So right after I passed the bar and everybody found out, I went ahead and started working on my law firm. I had a lot of difficulty when I started trying to find a job. So I just made my own job. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but I wanted to tell you a little about me. So first of all, one thing that everyone should know is that I'm a proud Howard University alumni. So HU, if you're a real true alum, it's the real HU. We don't know anything about Hampton. But I majored in psychology and French as a double major while I was there. So it was a very untraditional major. Many people tried to talk me out of it. They told me I should be a poli-sci major. I said, no, I like psychology and I like French. I'm pretty sure I'll stick out on the application more so than you, because everyone in law school was probably a poli-sci major or English major. I'll be different. So that actually helped me become fluent in French. So that gave me a cool trait to talk about on my application. And then it also helped me take interesting courses like race and racism, and then psychology and the Black experience. Two things that were really important to me at Howard were for me to get a psychology perspective of jurors that I might have to encounter later on in life. So I wanted to understand the psychology perspective. And I really was fascinated by it in high school. And then French gave me a different mindset when it came to actually speaking a different language. So some of my clients don't speak the same language as I do. And I wanted to be able to say, well, you know what? I speak your language. I know French, because how many Black people actually know a different language outside of, English? Or how many Americans, for that matter, know a different language outside of, English? So I wanted to be proficient in that. And I tried my hand in Hindi because I'm half Indian when I was younger. I don't do very well with character languages. So whenever someone comes across me with a character, I'm just like, oh, I know some of those words, but I don't know all of them. But French, I don't know why, I picked up on it. After Howard, I actually moved on to the University of Alabama School of Law. I was going to take a year off between Howard and law school because I wasn't getting into the law schools that I wanted to. I didn't get the offers I wanted to. And I was just, I wanted to be able to go with peace of mind. But then the University of Alabama School of Law called me back. They actually emailed me first, and they said, hey, do you have time to talk? And it was like the Dean of Admissions for the University of Alabama School of Law at the time. And I was just like, yes, I have time to talk, sure. I mean, I applied to your school a while ago. I've been waiting to hear back. And so they finally called me. I'm in the middle of driving, so I answered the phone call. She's like, I just want to let you know you got into law school. And I was like, wait. I need to go park and put my car. You're telling me a lot of stuff that I need to be actually able to celebrate. So I went to my car and they called her back. And so she's like, yes, you got into the University of Alabama School of Law. We're going to let you go into this early month program that's going to be fully paid for. And we just want you to be able to attend or whatever. So I hadn't decided what I wanted to do at that point still. But I did know that they had given me an offer, not a tuition offer yet, but they had at least given me an initial offer of, come to the course. I told her, I was deciding between Emory, because everyone from Howard, that's where they went. They went to Emory after law school. So I was like, I want to be with my college classmates. We can all be in Emory together.
In Atlanta, Emory?
Yeah, in Atlanta.
Okay.
So I wanted to go to Emory Law. And so I was like, yeah, I can do that. Emory's top ranked will be good. And a bunch of my friends or Howard colleagues were going there. So it'll be like a Howard family at Emory. But I actually did not go to Emory because I wanted to visit the schools. And when I visited the school, Emory versus Alabama, there just was no comparison. I got the red carpet treatment at Alabama. I went to Emory, I guess, during the summer, but I mean, they got to do better recruitment in the summer too, because that's when most of us end up getting our acceptances sometimes in the summer. You got to be able to do recruitment then. But Emory, it was kind of elitist when it came to engaging me. Alabama took me around the school, took my mom and me to my mom's favorite restaurant, rolled out the red carpet, told me all the places I needed to go. The university's professors called me and, told me about, different things that were good about my application, that I could still advocate for in the scholarship siding process. So I ended up letting admissions know I needed to know if they were going to offer me some money so I could attend. Because again, I didn't want a barrier to my education to be that I couldn't afford to attend, or I picked up a lot of massive student loan debt. And so they ended up offering me a more than half scholarship package. I did lose it my first year, but that's just because, the very strenuous nature that is law school. You have to maintain a certain GPA. I was a first generation law student in my family, so nobody in my family had actually been a law student or a lawyer. So I was the first, so I didn't really have a lot of help. But that's not an excuse. I learned how to figure it out. And then by the end of my 3-year year, I had booked a class and got the A+, and all of my classmates were shocked to see me at the honors ceremony being awarded. So that's my educational history.
Awesome. So I appreciate that. So that's a great, high level, bringing us to your background with education, and you went from the real HU in Howard, right? And you went
you got on.
Went to also the real University of Alabama, but I guess there's only one Bama, right? Roll Tide, and everybody knows, football and so forth. But I want to kind of talk a little bit here about your experiences with internships. So first of all, did you have any internships when you were in undergrad? What was it like to try and navigate that world as someone in your family who was the first person trying to become a lawyer? And then in grad school, the same thing. So you're now in grad school, you're one step away from becoming a professional and achieving all the dreams that you hope for. What were those experiences with internships? And what can you share? What were some of the biases that you encountered there?
Okay, so one thing I will say is that I didn't get a lot of paid internships. So if you're coming here because you want to learn how to get a paid internship, don't come to me, because I did a lot of volunteer because I wanted to go into public service work once I finished law school. I wanted to do criminal defense since I was in 8th grade. So if you know anything about me, that's what I wanted to do. So all of mine were criminal defense based. My first internship was actually a really cool internship. It was the Federal Public Defender's Office here in Birmingham, Alabama. And I got a chance to work under the public defender for the Federal Public Defenders in Alabama and Birmingham. He's a Black man. And so I got a chance to learn under him. And then one of the mentors there, his name is Glennon 3. He was also a Howard Law alum. So that was something that we had in common. So he was a person that I got a chance to talk to in the office. And then I worked with Allison Case, who was the internship manager. So I got my first internship there. I interviewed with her. It was actually the night before the interview. One of the upperclassmen in Alabama was like, this is the federal, not the state and local. You have to prepare different. And I was like, oh, my bad. I don't even know. So I read, I think it was like a 80 to 90 page article written by Harvard about the difference between federal and state and local so that I could articulate it in the interview with the person interviewing me. And so they were just blown away that I knew all the different things and nuances that came with the job. And so they're like, yeah, you're hired. So I didn't tell anybody. I made a big name for myself at the law school, not telling any of my classmates anything about what I was doing. I just didn't really feel like my life was meant to be compared. I felt like I was supposed to do my thing, they were supposed to do their thing, and we could come together at the end. But my whole thing is we're all competing in a high level, and me trying to know nosily what you're doing isn't going to help me get to my level at this point. So I just took that mindset. It didn't go over well with a lot of my classmates who wanted to know my business. So I ended up working with some of my classmates in that office the year. And I actually was able to draft a motion to suppress for an actual trial they had. So I was able to draft the inner workings of that. And I got a chance to learn about, the federal guidelines and the worksheets that you have to fill out. So I got a chance to work on those. So that led to multiple internships after. So it was like a kaleidoscope effect of beauty. It was just a beautiful thing. One internship led to the other, led to the other. And if you do it right, that's what it's supposed to do, because you want building internships. Even if you're going into big law, you want an internship relationship that builds upon new opportunities. So I met a judge, Judge Kugler, here in Birmingham, Alabama, during the trial that we were allowed to sit in on as interns. And he asked the, interns a question. And, a lot of people like to be like know-it-alls in law school, but I was like one of the people who was able to admit I didn't know anything. So more people actually like that in this profession. It's refreshing. So he asked us a question. It was a simple question about criminal procedure or something. He asked us if we knew about this term. And I was like, well, Judge, can you explain it to us like we don't? Because, we might, but I feel like you would explain it better. For some reason, that went over really well with him. It impressed him to the point that while I was still at that internship, I applied to a job that came open. It was an internship working for them in Tuscaloosa, where I was going to school. And I got an email back saying, oh, he wants to hire you. He just wants to know when you want to start. It was just an impression I made in the courtroom. And then that led to, and that was like my 2L year. So that led to a externship that I ended up doing in Washington, D.C., working for the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. One of the people from my first internship basically told me that they were going to be here and I should go to this event. And then I gave my resume to the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers person in that, I think it was a training. So in that training, I just put it in her lap and I said, here you go. I have a resume on file. It's so great that I get a chance to sit next to you and talk to you a little bit about what I do. What's that?
So you mentioned when we had a chance to sort of connect before this, you mentioned that you ran into obstacles when you were going from like unpaid opportunities to like paid opportunities. And the law firms, the people who run these law firms, who are like, it's called like old money sort of law firms, they've been established, they've been around for a while, did not necessarily look like you. And so could you maybe, let's kind of like dig down into that bit. What was that like, and what was that struggle like, and how did you overcome that?
So I got some experiences, and this was just someone who gave feedback to people who knew me or people who were trying to help me get a job. And it was, I think, and then one of them happened when I was in law school. I actually asked for a letter of recommendation, and I was told by a professor that because I didn't have journal experience at the school, mind you, I had gotten published, outside of school in an academic journal for law. But because I didn't get on journal, I wasn't on journal at the school, they didn't think I deserved a letter of recommendation. So I wasn't able to actually utilize them at all. And so later on, they came back and said, oh, I'm ready to write your letter of recommendation. I said, no, I'm okay. I already found people who were willing to, with my credentials as they were. They didn't tell me I had to be more. They told me that I already brought a lot to the table, which is not what you told me. Another bad experience that I had was people would always use the elitism of you have to be on journal, you have to be top 15% to be valuable. And I think that's a poor narrative to start telling students, because if you think about it, and the 125 people that might be in your class, about 15% of them are going to actually be the top 15%. And that's it. There is no other top 15%. So you're discounting the rest, or like what I like to lovingly call the 85%, because you believe that that's the only way you can find top talent, but you're not taking into consideration factors like first generation, like the fact that a lot of the lesson plans and things aren't structured to be more inclusive. They're actually structured to be exclusive of certain minority backgrounds and minority communities. And then you're also keeping out standardized testing and this whole elitism culture where people help the majority, which is usually white people, make it well in this industry. And if you look at the statistics, about 5% of lawyers are Black. So, if you look at it from that perspective, that number is going to grow. And if you look in Birmingham specifically, our judges are mainly Black women, and Black women and Black men judges. So we have really changed a little bit of that appearance-wise here in Birmingham, but it's still more work to do. So the fact that you even allow the top 15%, the journals, to discredit someone's credibility or their ability to do great work is really keeping top talent from your position. So
Wow.
one person told me because I wasn't top 15% and because I didn't have journal experience, as in I wasn't on the journal at Alabama, they wouldn't even consider talking to me. They didn't even look at my resume. They just told, I mean, I actually told my mom they wouldn't look at my resume. They wouldn't help me. And that was a really disconcerting experience because I was just trying to find opportunities. You know, I just really wanted to grow. And anybody who knows me knows that I work for everything I do. So if I don't know, I'm going to make sure that I know one day in the future, or I'm going to ask like 85 people, I'm going to research it because that's what we do. But if you just look at the stats, if you just look at numbers, then, I mean, you're really playing a really poor game with people's talents, because there are people, because I used to like to use my dad as an example. He passed away last year, but my dad was not a top basketball player. He had to learn or be taught basketball. And if he had a coach not willing to teach him in high school, then he never would have went on to be on UAB's first team with Bartow and Oliver Robinson, all of them that were in scandal, I think, recently. But they all ended up getting drafted, or at least got a chance to be drafted to the NBA. And that's the thing about coaching talent. You can always coach talent to be top talent. But if you don't coach people who have potential because you look at numbers and rank and all of that other stuff, you're going to miss out on the best people. And that was what I experienced, is that if I didn't have the high rank, I was treated like shit, sorry, at my jobs. I was basically seen as inferior and treated as inferior. And sometimes I was given problems to solve. And I got feedback later that those were impossible problems to solve. Like, they gave me things that they knew I would fail at in order for me to be embarrassed, really. And that was really disconcerting. But I didn't let that phase me. I didn't let that phase me when I applied, but it phased me later because I was thinking about how many other students aren't as thick-skinned, or it takes longer for them to even try to get that same treatment and would still want to continue in this profession.
And while it's going on, what were like the dynamics, like as far as what's the word I'm looking for? As far as like makeup. So you were interning at law firms. You were trying to move up. You were getting a lot of roadblocks because elitism, right? So, you know, like if you weren't at a certain level in their perception, their views, if you didn't graduate at a certain part of the class, the doors weren't as open for you. But do you attribute any of that to like being who you were, or do you think that's the culture of like becoming a lawyer, like, you know?
So I think that's twofold, but just to clarify, I never interned in any law firms. I only interned at public defenders' offices and things like that. I was not going into big law, so I wasn't even going to attempt to intern at a law firm because I knew what I wanted to do, which was go into public service. I ended up starting a firm where I do more than that, but I wanted to go into public service, and that was always my intention through law school. So every thing was about criminal defense. But what I will say is that there was a great CLE that we did free for Magic City Bar Association yesterday called Diversity and Inclusion in the Culture in Big Law, Diversity in Big Law. And then Bridget Harris, Marcus Maples, and Tim Shelton all spoke about how they're working on changing the cultures in their law firms. So I do see a shift happening in law firms actually being more inclusive. Every culture, though, is the reason why those things happen. So there are people, and I think Bridget mentioned this, is that, you know, they'll say they walked the new associate around the firm and said that they did their diversity service for the and that's not a good way to showcase diversity. For me, there's probably some text coming out soon for a magazine article for a quote, but basically a lot of people put Black women in these leadership positions, right? But they give them no power, or they give them a poor support system. So what ends up happening is that they're still outnumbered when it comes to rank. So yeah, you have a Black woman partner at your firm, but when it comes to making decisions, the firm always outvotes her on every decision. Well, then you don't really have a Black woman partner at your firm who can make true decisions. So it's really the culture. It's the fact that they're still outnumbered. And then even when they're included in the room, their number or their vote is still, there's still no equality. There's still a huge of people who don't care about the interest of others, and not as much of people who care about the interest of others later on. So I think
Right.
it's important to keep that in mind, that it is the culture, but it is changing. And I think Bridget Harris and Amber Hall, and I think one other partner that she had at Lightfoot here in Birmingham, they actually wrote a great article on Diversity 360. So I want y'all to look at that. It was just mentioned yesterday, so I can't, like, I would be remiss not to mention it today.
Send me the link.
I shall do that.
Yes.
I shall. So, but that it, to answer your question, it is the culture. And the culture has to change, and the culture can only change when the people in the big law industries are feeling that pressure. And right now, because of what's happened and the unfortunate stuff that's happening in our country, they're being forced to deal with that issue head on. And that is a big thing. You have to make sure that you keep that in mind. You have to make sure that you were always forward thinking, because if they were doing that from the beginning, they wouldn't have to make these statements, just be paying lip service because the statement isn't reflective of their leadership. So
awesome. So I thank you for that insightful answer. And I'm glad that it is changing. I think it's important. I think that all industries, this is why I want to host these talks, because I think that all industries need to move forward, right? Kind of like literally out of the dark ages. There's so much talent across the country. I say it all the time to my team. The two biggest sellers in America are, sex and urban America, like urban America, which is like just a euphemism for, the Black culture. And not enough is given back to urban America when we contribute so much. But urban America, the Black experience is a very diverse experience. And we have engineers and lawyers, just like we have entertainers and athletes within the community. And we need to uplift those voices and find those voices and, empower them to be part of the change, to be part of the conversation, to be at the table, because we do contribute so much to the national lexicon, the culture of this country. So I wanted to touch on something. So when we talked, you opened my eyes up to an experience that I honestly never thought of. Maybe so. My background is I was an engineer, mechanical engineer with an aerospace focus. And to become what's called a PE, a professional engineer, you get to take a test, and it's a difficult test. And as an engineer, I thought I could fail this thing. You had an experience, so you graduated law school, and then linearly you think, okay, go undergrad, go grad. I get some experience. I take the bar exam, I pass, and then I'm off to the races. What happened in your situation?
So in my situation, you take the bar, tell them keep the pencil, they give you the pencil back and tell you to re-enroll because you just failed the bar. They're not nice about it either. They give you your pencil back and then they're like, you also owe us some money and you got a week to pay it. I'm like, I'm depressed and you just told me to fail the bar. You want me to pay you again to take it? And then, they follow it up with, if you don't pay us and you don't enroll again, you can't take the next sitting for the bar. And I was like, y'all really should just work on, just at least being nice about it. Like everybody doesn't pass or something.
They force you. They force you to retake it again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not forced, but I mean, if you do dream of being a lawyer, you have to retake it until you pass.
Right.
So, they give you an ultimatum. If you want to enroll, you get this limited window to enroll in the new bar. Otherwise, you can't sit in it. You can't sit for that bar. You have to wait until the next bar. And COVID changed kind of when bars happen, but they used to happen in February and July. But in some states, they're happening in September right now. So again, it's changed completely. So I do not want to take the bar under these conditions, and I really hope that they do well. But
so you didn't pass the bar on your first try. But you did obviously go back and retake it, and you crushed it, and you passed it with flying colors, right? I'm talking all the colors of the rainbow. You just killed it. And then so now you pass the bar exam. You can work as a practicing attorney, lawyer. Am I using the terminology proper, or the
lawyer, attorney, either way?
Okay.
However you want to say it.
You can practice, and you can make some money out there, right? That's what matters. So now you're off to the races. You've got I've got all these badges of honor. I've accomplished it. What was what was your year one take, or like what did you make the first year when you actually went out there? Like, what was that like?
So I like to preface this with I only made $80, but I also lived at home with my folks. Okay.
So for 1 year, you made $80.
Yeah, 80
I'm,
bucks.
I'm
I
gonna,
had one person pay me $80. That was the only client that paid me money in my bank, in my trust, and I earned it. So I was able to move it to my bank account. That was the only amount of money I made.
I just did some quick math on my trusty, handy, super expensive iPhone calculator here. So for everybody out there, that's 22 cents a day, right? But even though if I average it out, over 365, it's 22 cents a day. But it didn't prevent you from continuing to move forward, correct? Like how did you go from making $80 and saying, Jesus, like what is going on here? What did you do to like overcome the struggles? And actually, I would like to, let me take a step back. What why like why did you make $80? Like why was it only $80?
So I think a lot of it is not being exposed early. And, if I had time to take all these classes in law school, I probably would have. But again, I still think Birmingham School of Law students and other law schools are way more equipped on starting a law practice than we were. At least they have a lot more help and a lot more mentors that would actually help them through that process, because we're actually not encouraged to start our own firms necessarily from Alabama. I just didn't get that tape that I could do it. So I think that one is I didn't know. As I explained to you, I had to find out how to start my own firm by reading, and I kid you not, I tell people this, How to Start Your Own Firm for Dummies book. And I literally read the thing from cover to cover. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense for me to work at a firm because, I'll make this amount of money and the firm will make what I would bill for my time. And I was like, I'll just bill for my time. That's what I'll do. I mean, there's no disrespect to the firm, but I was like, I don't really want to work 60 hours. I had at that time, my dad had a lot of medical issues. He was in and out of the hospital. My mom was a caretaker. I was a caregiver, other stuff and things that he needed. I didn't want to be in a situation in which I had to be overworked to the point where I wouldn't even be able to spend time with him because I would have to jump in and go to work, jump in and go to work, jump in and go to work. I wanted the flexibility in my job to be able to work remotely from home, to be able to be here if my mom needed to be, at work or needed to go out or needed to do something for the, for the house or anything like that or for work. I wanted to be able to do that. I wanted that flexibility because I didn't work this hard to go through law school and undergrad and get to the point where I passed the bar because it took a minute. I didn't do all that work just so I could just be sitting in someone's office from 8 to 5 when I really would prefer to be in the company of my dad who had medical issues. So I want to talk to him. I don't want to talk to you. And I'm being frank, I don't want to do that. I want to be able to have that conversation. And if I want to sleep in, I want to be able to do that. Now, mind you, your practice, you can't always, especially when you get busy. But when I first started out, I mean, I wanted the flexibility to work from Starbucks if I wanted to, and not have to work in some office where I felt like someone was watching me every 5 seconds and calculating everything that I was doing and trying to see if I was being a good worker. So I decided to go into that, push myself forward. And I realized that the first year, if you do it right, I mean, your first year of practice, it can either go well or, it doesn't go so well. It's just a hit or miss. Some attorneys I know, they were better at marketing than I was. So I just watched them and learned how to be better at my own marketing, either by word of mouth or talking to people or having better like Facebook videos and things like that. I didn't know how to be engaging sometimes on Facebook. But when you're engaging on Facebook, people think that they can talk to you more. I didn't know that you had to do that to be able to connect with the people who might want to talk to you. I thought, you just put out, I'm a lawyer, and if you need a lawyer, I'm a lawyer.
Right. So you went from, so that first year you went from making $80, yep. And then but you turned it around, and could you share maybe just like briefly like how you turned around and like what was the year 2 outcome for you instead?
So how I turned it around is more important than what the number is right now, because I want you to know that $80 is not what I made in 2019. I made much more than $80 in 2019. And the way that I did that was at the end of 2018, because I had networked. So I wasn't just sitting on my thumbs. I was going in, meeting every single judge I could, giving every single one of them my card, letting them know what I specialize in, if they wanted to appoint me to their courts. I was going to every happy hour networking event. That's virtual networking events for you guys in COVID world. So make sure you're going to those still matter. And I'll tell you why in a second, but I was going to all of those. And one of my happy hours, we're all, kicking back, we're all talking about nothing, shooting the breeze, because this is when attorneys can really help each other. They're like, oh, you're a cool person. And I was like, yeah, I know. Like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, well, I'm trying to, find success over here in Birmingham. I'm struggling right now. I don't have anybody to mentor me for real, walk me through all the steps. And they're like, call these people. And it was like a list of like 5 or 10 people that I was supposed to call. And I was like, I'm going to call these people. I don't know them. Like, what I'm going to do, just tell them I know this person, but I did. And that's what worked. And that's what happened. So those same people gave me some work for their firms. Those same people ended up being huge mentors to me. And I actually met someone, my favorite place to go, which is Starbucks, who told me about a judge who appoints young women who are just starting out on cases. And I got my first case before the end of the year. And those cases paid out in January of the next year. So I had the nest egg I started. I went ahead and formed the LLCs for both my book brand and for my firm. And I was good. But it took a second. It took a second to get there because, you can't go forming stuff with $80. I do business formation for a living. $80 is not going to get you a lot. Might get you part of your formation process, but not everything that you need to form. So that's one thing that I learned is that, in your first year, it is going to be difficult sometimes if you don't have the connections, if you don't have all of the different talents that are already built in and you can afford it. But sometimes people have made big names for themselves, so they don't worry, they don't have such a difficult time. For me, I was really never a big name, even though a lot of people knew me. I was not a big name, at least on social media or anything like that. So when I announced I was a lawyer, everyone did call me, but a lot of people didn't necessarily have stuff in my state. So I couldn't handle it in their state because I wasn't licensed there. So I was like, okay, well, one day we'll figure this out and we'll make this work for you and I. But yeah, so I ended up making 5 figures in 2019. And I wanted to
huge turnaround.
Yeah. So I wanted to give you guys that big lead up is because I'm telling you, it wasn't because I'm just me. It's because I did a bunch of groundwork that laid the foundation. I met every judge that I could meet. I talked to every attorney, asked them to introduce me to more judges. I asked attorneys, could I do work for them? I literally volunteered my own services to other attorneys because, that's not really, gonna put you in any trouble with the bar. But I asked them if they needed help with anything. That's what we do in this profession. We do referrals and things like that. I was like, do you need help? Do you want me to go in for you? I can go in for you. I did docketly. I did court appearance, which is like a lawyer Uber, if you will, so that we go in different firms that don't want to go into court. And so I just go into court for you, take your documents and argue for you. And you tell me what the arguments are. And that was fun. So I got a chance to be exposed to bankruptcy law that way. So I got a lot of experience in bankruptcy law, but I was working on the creditor side. So I was the enemy. But that's the luck of the draw. You gotta do what you gotta do to make money. So to make money that way so that I could be able to keep my lights on because, after 25, they kick you off your health insurance with your parents and you're responsible. So 2019 was a rough year. So I had to make sure I always kept a good amount of money in the pocket for the health insurance.
You definitely sound like a driven woman. And I know that the future is already bright, but I can just in talking to you, I can say just your drive for wanting success is evident and obvious. I wanted to kind of talk, come back, sort of like fill like the last bit of the gap here. I think so. When we talked, you shared with me your experience. Now you went through law school, you gained some experience, you didn't pass the bar exam, you persevered through that. Mm-hmm. Your first year as a professional lawyer, you made enough to buy dinner at a nice restaurant once for the entire year. The second year around, you come back and you're like on fire. you're making a complete change for yourself. You're building a business, you're building a company, you're building a brand for yourself. But now you walk into the courtroom, and let's sort of talk about what that experience has been, and does it continue to be that same experience for you when you walk into courtrooms where maybe the clerks and the people there are not as familiar with you? What have you experienced?
So I will preface, in Birmingham, we have a lot of Black judges and things like that. So my experience in those courts are great because they don't get mistaken as the help. But in Tuscaloosa or other places where I have to go down, or some other small town in Alabama where I have to go down and do the appearance, they're like, do you have a case, ma'am? I was like, no, I'm the attorney. So I have the full suit on, full suit with the padfolio in my hand. I usually don't walk in, places if I'm the actual client with all of that stuff in my hand, unless I got a case in front of the judge and I got to argue it myself. So that's just a thing to keep in mind. But either way, you should always assume, if you can, that I'm an attorney if I'm in a suit and I'm walking in court, because that's what most people assume about white men when they walk in the court and they're in a suit. They're the attorney in the case. So if you that assumption, why am I being considered the help? And that was what was they, I think one time, and they didn't mean to, and they did apologize profusely, but they were like, I'm sorry, ma'am, you're gonna have to go behind the bar. And I was like, no, I'm an attorney. I can be in front of the bar. And if you know anything about being an attorney, there's actually a bar in the courtroom. That's why they talk about passing the bar, so that there's actually a bar between the people who are there for a case and the actual court. And so you go past the bar when you pass the bar. So I was like, no, I'm an attorney. My name is Neena Speer. Here's my card. You don't know me yet, but I know it's federal court. I haven't been here. I don't live in Tuscaloosa, but I want you to make sure that you know me. And they didn't mean it. They really, really had no idea. But that's the culture. A lot of times you get mistaken that way. I had a very different experience in some people's courtrooms where I was respected, and it was also a courtroom that I love. So Judge Kugler over here in Birmingham, well, in Tuscaloosa, I was down for a court case, and I just went by to pop in because I was one of his old interns. And he actually had me talk to his new interns as like a big professional person, just because I used to work for him. And he's like, do you mind? Just come talk to them. I just feel like you should be a good person to talk to them. And he included me in that. So, there are good experiences that you can have. You just have to make sure that you keep this one thing in mind. Even if they don't respect you in the courtroom, you hold yourself to a level of decorum that they can eventually get to the point where they see that and they expect that from every person they meet. And you're not saying, you're going to always say the right things. You might curse, you might look a little crazy. Your hair might be braided, it might not be braided, but you want to be
which is perfectly fine, by the way.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine with me. Other people, sometimes they tell you got to change it. I don't recommend you change anything about yourself. If you have to change that much materially about yourself for them to think you're okay or acceptable, I think that that's a question about whether or not you truly have a culture that is inclusive. Because when you have to change those things about yourself to appease certain people, I think that you're not telling people, look, we are inclusive here, we're inclusive at this firm, and we're not going to have our associates do things that don't fit their hairstyle. As long as they look professional and it looks kept, who cares if it's braids or it's locks? That it looks professional, it's kept. You're able to do all sorts of styles in your hair and it can still make it professional and kept. So I think it's really important to keep in mind that being respected is a very bad experience for most people who are minority in this profession. They do not get the respect. There's a shirt, I think by Becoming JD on Instagram called "Nah, I'm the Lawyer." That's what you feel like when you go into a courtroom or when you go into a classroom. And then when you're in a classroom, and you and I talked about this a little bit offline, I experienced, someone saying, well, Neena, Black people are committing more of the crimes. I mean, look at the prisons. And that's just because people rely on ignorance instead of facts and actually going back and doing their own research. They would rather rely on their own ignorance instead of take the time to delve further. And I mean, that just talks about their ability as a lawyer, because if you actually do your research, on the prisons and why it's made up of majority Black people, then you actually understand that it's that way because of systemic racism, not because they're actually out there committing more crimes, but they're actually being stopped more. They're actually being profiled more. They're actually being pulled over for driving while Black. Those are real things. They're being racially profiled. So they're being put in prisons at an exorbitantly high rate compared to their white counterparts. And no, I don't think that if they did the crime that it's going to be, you know, I don't think that it should be an excuse because they're Black versus white. I do think that it's worth a conversation to really, you know, go into that. So I think that you get the disrespect based off of pure ignorance. But if you take that time to be someone who can help them learn, but not in a way that just kind of embarrasses them, because I think a lot of us do that, but in a way that kind of shows that you have a sense of humor about yourself, but at the same time, you're very strict and dedicated to advocating for, you know, racial injustice and systemic racism. I think that you can use that as a learning opportunity. And if they don't want to learn, that's on them, but you can at least use that. No, I'm a lawyer. You know, a lot of times, you know, minority lawyers mistaken as that. So that might be something that you guys might want to change. And you can say it in a way like that that's non-threatening. So it is an experience, but I think that we can change the culture by being able to have that conversation right then when it happens. Because a lot of people, and you know this, Thomas,
we do.
Yeah, when you get upset with something, you don't tell them, right? And then they come back and they're like, you know what, you really upset me when you said that. And you know, the first thing they say is, why didn't you tell me right then? I stop right then in the moment when I have some issue and I just tell them, hey, I didn't like that. Hey, I didn't appreciate what just happened. Because I'd rather them know from me than find out from someone else that knows me later on.
Right.
Because, you know, I didn't have the balls to tell them. So I believe in telling people exactly how you feel in a way that's non-threatening, non-judgmental, and that will at least give them the education and empowerment to try to do better. You can't change everybody. Everybody doesn't want to change. So
and I hope that we're able to continue like that's a lesson that I'm going to, you know, implement more in my life, is like at that moment, if I feel uncomfortable with something, I need to address it right then and there. And I think that does help move the conversation forward with people. I hope that for people who are out there watching us today, I hope that you're able to take some of the lessons from Neena's experience today. I hope that we're able to like bring that to our workplace to be our authentic selves. So I want to say thank you very much today, Neena. It was great to hear from you. It was great to hear your story. We're like practically neighbors. I actually, a good friend of mine, Ryan, he may be watching right now, but he's a good friend of mine. And Forrest Satterfield and Ryan Mason are both from Alabama. They are UAB alum. They're not.
My mom and dad are both UAB alums. So look at that.
So I visit them from time to time. So if I'm ever in the Birmingham area, I will shoot you a message and we can all catch up for whatever like the hottest little pub in the area is. As long as we stay 6 feet away from one another, then
I'm down 6 feet, mask, and I'm there. Awesome. Do you want me to give any information to them about what I do, how to contact me afterwards?
That'd be great. Yeah, sure. Why don't we wrap it up with that, and then yeah.
Okay, so basically, y'all, you guys heard from me. I have a firm. I do lawyer things when I'm not talking to Thomas about, you know, hiring and bias and hiring. So I am a trademark attorney. I do copyrights and do contract drafting and review. I also do business formation. And I also do criminal defense and family law in Alabama specifically. I'm sorry, I can't do everybody's business. And I mean, everybody's criminal and family law stuff. So if you have some family criminal law stuff, you can send it to me. But what I will say is if you need to contact me, you can call me 205-490-8068. That'll reach, you know, me, my office, anybody related, and they'll get it to me ASAP. You can also contact me on Neena, Neena, Speer, Speer. It's on the screen if you can't see it. esq@gmail.com. And I'm gonna give you my personal Instagram. You can message me on there anytime. It's at Neena, Neena_RANI. And I do Trademark That Thursdays. So tomorrow will be a Trademark That Thursday. And then all week, a girl named Ashley Foote, who's an attorney, and I are doing sports and IP. Today is actually trademarks. And it'll start at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on my law firm page. So
Awesome.
again, stay tuned. And Thomas, you're doing great work. Like, this is awesome. I haven't actually talked about anything from this perspective yet from my interview. So I really enjoyed this.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the words of encouragement. Thank you for coming on today. And we will definitely be in touch. And I'm probably going to join your live stream tonight. So
Yay!
until then, Neena, until then, Facebook, until then, Real Industry Community, I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great day.
Awesome.